I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee, when I got the message from Tanya. She was usually quick to reply, but this one felt off. She said her leadership seminar was extended through the weekend, which sounded a little strange because it was supposed to wrap up Friday. Right after that, my phone rang, and it was Mr. Grayson, her department head. He sounded like he was trying to play it cool, but it was obvious he was confused. He asked why Tanya hadn't shown up to the seminar. I didn't let the tension catch me off guard. I played dumb, acting like I didn't know anything. But then he dropped the bomb. Tanya wasn't even there. I didn't freak out. I didn't yell. I just sat there, staring at my coffee as the world around me narrowed down. She'd said she was out of town, but her GPS had her somewhere else. A beach resort, 50 minutes away, using our joint debit card to pay for the room. That's when I called Leo, my cousin, divorce lawyer. I didn't know what else to do. I needed to know if I was seeing things clearly or if I was missing something. Leo was calm, direct. He told me exactly what proof I'd need if this was going where I thought it was. He even said he could have the paperwork ready by morning. I didn't feel relief, not at all. I just felt numb. I went through our place like I was moving out of a shared apartment, not ending a marriage. No emotions, just sorting. Her gym gear, the running shoes she never wore anymore, her skincare bottles lined up like they were important. I grabbed them all and dumped them in boxes. Her aunt's cookbooks. I couldn't bring myself to even look at them, so they went in the garage too. Just stuff. All of it. 8 years. Almost 8 years, and there was no part of me that felt any weight. We didn't have kids, which probably helped. I didn't have to deal with the ghost of a future that could have been. We didn't really have a shared life either, just pieces. Her career. Her ambition to hit VP by 35. That's all she'd ever talked about. There was always something next, always something more important than us. I had spent so long pretending I could be happy with that I never saw how far she was drifting until it was too late. The house was in my name. She wanted the prenup, ironclad, so we didn't mix finances. That was smart of her, I guess. For her. She always did think ahead. I didn't bother with packing my stuff. There was nothing left to pack. What was mine, she'd never cared about anyway. So I walked through the rooms, moving fast, grabbing whatever felt like it belonged to her. A sweatshirt, a jacket she left in the closet. Her things were still scattered, half-packed from who knows when. Maybe she was already planning an exit before I ever found out. Maybe this was her way of telling me she was done. The divorce papers were already signed, but it didn't feel real until I put them on the kitchen counter. I left a sticky note on top. Grayson called. Feel better soon. I knew she wouldn't like that. I didn't care. I left the house before she even had a chance to call again. Leo had offered me a place to crash, and that's where I went. Tanya's phone was blowing up my own by the time I made it out the door. Over a dozen calls in under an hour. I didn't pick up once. I didn't want to hear her voice. Not after everything. I sat on Leo's couch, in his spare bedroom, staring at the blank walls and thinking about how easy it was to walk away. Too easy, maybe. There should have been more weight, more sadness. But all I felt was a strange kind of relief, like I'd been holding my breath for too long and could finally exhale. Still, I couldn't help but check my phone when it buzzed again. Tanya. This time, a text, we need to talk. What's going on? I stared at the screen for a minute. My thumb hovered over the reply button. Then I deleted it and turned the phone off. I barely slept that night. It was almost like I could feel her, like I could sense her pacing the floor in her mom's house, trying to figure out her next move. I didn't know how much longer I could hold this silence, but it didn't matter. It was all I had left. Around 2 a.m., the landline rang. Leo's phone. His wife answered it, and I could hear her muttering under her breath. She passed the phone to Leo, who picked up without saying a word. I could hear Tanya yelling from the other end, her voice shaky with the kind of panic you get when you're realizing everything is crumbling around you. She was convinced I was ignoring her, that I was abandoning her. She threatened to call the cops. Over what, I wasn't sure. I didn't know how she'd spin this. Probably that I locked her out or something dramatic. Leo's wife passed the phone back to him. He shook his head, chuckling under his breath. He just told Tanya I was asleep and wouldn't be waking up. The next morning, I woke up to the buzz of my phone. Over 100 texts. They ranged from frantic pleas to pure rage, all of them in some weird back and forth cycle like she couldn't decide which version of herself she wanted to be. Where are you? I'm sorry, please let's talk. I hate you. You'll regret this. What about us? You don't just throw that away. Then, of course, came the big one. I want half of everything. I don't think she realized what she'd just done. She was still thinking like she had a shot at making me feel guilty. But she forgot the one thing that kept her from getting half of everything. The prenup. I didn't waste time. I typed out a single message, my fingers moving like it was second nature. Your prenup disagrees. I didn't even wait. I hit send. She called right after. I almost didn't pick up, but then I remembered Leo was sitting right next to me, waiting to hear this. So I answered. Tanya started talking in circles, trying to play her usual victim card. You don't understand. You're not thinking about what's best for us. You're just leaving without a fight, without even trying. I could hear the shakiness in her voice, the way she was desperately trying to turn this around. Then I threw the bomb. I know about Brent. There was a sharp silence on the other end. I let it stretch out just long enough before I added, you know, the guy from the beach resort? Her response was instant. What are you talking about? What guy? I could hear her scrambling. I knew she was trying to think of something, anything to throw me off track. But I'd already seen the texts from her GPS. I'd already seen the hotel charges. Brent, I said again, calm now. The guy you've been seeing. The one you said was just a friend. Tanya went dead silent for a second, and when she finally spoke, her voice was thinner. That's not what you think. She stumbled through some story about how he was a work colleague who happened to be at the resort too. I didn't care. Leo was leaning forward, eyes wide, taking it all in. He couldn't believe the lies pouring out of her. Neither could I. Tell me again how he's just a work colleague when you used our debit card to pay for the room, I said, barely keeping my voice steady. The phone went quiet again. Then she sighed, a sound that almost seemed like defeat. I'll be better. I'll fix this, she said, her voice trying to sound calm, like she thought I'd believe her. I didn't say anything for a second. Leo was staring at me, his face a mix of disbelief and dark amusement. When I finally spoke, my voice felt colder than I expected. You don't get to fix this, Tanya. Not after everything. And that was it. There was nothing left to say. Saturday afternoon, my phone buzzed again. It was a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but something about the area code caught my attention. I picked up. Is this the husband of Tanya? A woman's voice asked, a little too sharp, a little too direct. Who's asking? I answered, already feeling the weight of something else I wasn't ready to deal with. I'm Laura, Brent's wife. She didn't wait for me to respond. I need to talk to you. In person. I paused, trying to catch up with what was happening. What's this about? She sighed, like she had already been through the worst of this. I hired a PI months ago. He's been with Tanya and I have the proof. Dates, photos, receipts. I can show you everything. I thought you should know. I almost laughed, but the way she said it, like this was some kind of business deal, killed the urge. All right, let's meet. We agreed to meet at a diner a few hours later. I couldn't stop thinking about what I just heard, how the mess just kept getting deeper. I never expected to find myself sitting across from the wife of the guy Tanya had been with, but there I was. When I walked in, Laura was already there. She had this look about her, tired, worn down, but she wasn't backing down. I could see the anger beneath her calm exterior. She slid a manila envelope across the table to me without saying a word. I opened it slowly, my hands steady. Inside were photos of Tanya and Brent at the beach, holding hands, laughing like there was nothing wrong. The dates matched the ones from Tanya's hotel receipts. There were even some receipts from local restaurants where they'd eaten together, places Tanya had claimed to be working during her supposed seminar. Laura was watching me, waiting for my reaction. You've got everything, huh? I asked, flipping through the papers. More than enough, she said flatly. You should know Brent's not a tech entrepreneur. He's a receptionist at a tire shop. Not that he ever bothered to tell Tanya. She paused, shaking her head like it was all just too stupid. She thinks I don't know. She thinks I'm too dumb to figure it out. I stared at the photos of Tanya, seeing her so differently now. I wasn't mad, but I felt something close to it. I didn't know why, but seeing the woman I'd loved with this guy she'd painted as something he wasn't, hit me harder than I expected. Laura's voice broke through my thoughts. She told him you were emotionally abusive and that you were gay. Like you didn't know who she was anymore. I blinked. What? Laura shrugged, a short, humorless laugh escaping her. Yeah, she's been feeding him that line. Figured you should hear it from someone who knows. I took a breath, pushing the urge to laugh down. This was beyond ridiculous. I didn't have the energy for games. Brent's a fraud. Why would she even believe him? Laura leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, looking at me like I was missing something obvious. It's not about believing him. It's about her not wanting to be found out. She made her own choices, and now she's trying to cover it all up. She doesn't want you to see the truth. She was right. All of it. Tanya wasn't scared of losing me. She was scared of being exposed. I looked down at the pictures one last time and put them back in the envelope. What now? I asked, my voice flat. I filed for divorce on Friday, she said, glancing at me as if waiting for some kind of reaction. Served him at work. Figured it was the cleanest way to get this over with. He's not my problem anymore. I nodded, more out of habit than anything. Then I checked my phone. Another message from Tanya. Brent lied about everything. We need to talk. I ignored it. Again. I'm not the only one who's been lied to, Laura said, watching me. But I'm done. I just wanted you to know. So when you're ready, we can move forward. I didn't know what to say. The whole situation was too much drama, too much mess. I'll be in touch, I said. And I meant it. I needed to handle this my own way. But for now, the only thing I was sure of was that I was done. After everything, Tanya wasn't going to get to spin this into her own narrative. It was time to close that chapter for good. Monday morning, Grayson called again. Hey, it's Grayson, he said, his voice a little too cheery for what I knew was coming. I just wanted to thank you for confirming where Tanya really was last week. He paused for a second, probably waiting for me to say something. I didn't. I'm sure you can imagine this doesn't exactly sit well with the higher-ups. She's still not here, hasn't answered her phone. I didn't say anything, just let him talk. I didn't care about his concerns anymore. She wasn't his problem now. Anyway, he continued, HR's handling it now, but I'll need you to sign a statement, confirm she's been AWOL. Once that's all done, we'll take it from there. I could barely keep from rolling my eyes. Got it. By Tuesday, Tanya was officially fired. Grayson emailed me a copy of the termination letter. It didn't even feel real reading it, like the last thing tying her to any kind of normal life had just been yanked away. But it didn't end there. Tanya tried to file for unemployment. I guess she figured the system would protect her, that she could just flip the narrative and come out smelling like roses. The unemployment office denied her claim. Cause misconduct. I don't think that hit her until later that week. She had no more cards to play, but it didn't stop her from trying. Wednesday night, Tanya showed up at Leo's house with her sister. I didn't know they'd even made contact, but there they were, stumbling into his driveway like they owned the place, yelling about legal rights and being blindsided. It wasn't a surprise. Not at this point. Leo and his wife weren't having it. His wife immediately called the cops. Tanya and her sister didn't seem to care. They were both drunk, swaying around the yard, shouting things I couldn't even understand. Tanya was the loudest. He stole everything. This is my house, she screamed, her words slurring. I was the one who built everything. You don't just get to take it all. Leo's wife was firm on the phone with the cops. She didn't let Tanya's rants distract her. They're causing a scene. We want them off the property. When the cops arrived, Tanya kept going. I could hear her from inside the house. I'm not leaving until he gives me what's mine, she yelled. He can't do this to me. I didn't respond. I stayed quiet, watching from the window as the officers talked to them, trying to get them to calm down. But Tanya wasn't having it. Her sister was quieter, just looking down, probably realizing how bad this was getting. Eventually, the cops made them leave. Tanya wasn't making any more threats, but she was still shouting about how I'd taken her house. It was a claim that didn't hold up. The house was in my name. It was in the prenup, clear as day. She had no legal leg to stand on, but that didn't stop her from trying. She kept texting me, demanding answers, threatening me with lawsuits. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Every move she made was a desperate grasp at something that was already gone. She was sinking, and I didn't care to throw her a lifeline anymore. By the time they left, the tension in the air was thick. Leo and I sat down in the living room, both of us feeling the weight of what was happening, but neither of us saying anything. We didn't need to. This was her last desperate act before everything finally collapsed. The next few days after Tanya and her sister made their scene at Leo's felt like an inevitable slide towards something worse. On Friday, my bank flagged an identity theft attempt. Someone had tried to access my accounts using my social security number. The worst part? They failed the security questions, but only because I had set up fake ones. I didn't trust Tanya with anything, especially after seeing how low she'd go. The bank filed a report, and the police opened a fraud case. It wasn't surprising, not at this point. I had no idea if she was behind it directly, but it didn't take much to connect the dots. She wasn't just unraveling her own life. She was dragging me down with her. I didn't even have time to process the bank's email before I heard about Tanya's latest stunt. She launched a blog, a whole damn blog. The title was Surviving Emotional Abuse. My story of leaving a toxic marriage. I just stared at the screen. She painted herself as the victim, claiming she left me because I was emotionally abusive. Of course, the whole thing was framed as her escape. She told everyone how she'd been suffocated by my controlling ways, how I'd undermined her career, how she'd tried for years to make it work. But he wouldn't change. And that's when she started the kicker. She wrote about the healing retreat at the beach hotel. The one where she'd been with Brent, the guy who, according to her, was a therapist, her mental health mentor. My stomach churned when I saw that. She was selling her lies as if they were gospel. And because she couldn't stop spinning, she started charging for exclusive healing content. Like people were supposed to pay to read about her supposed journey to find herself. It was all smoke and mirrors. Leo called me the next morning, laughing. He had subscribed to her blog to gather evidence. "You won't believe this," he said, barely containing himself. "She's got this post where Brent, yeah, the guy from the beach, is her mentor. Can you believe that? A damn mentor." I didn't laugh. Couldn't. But hearing Leo try to hold it together was the only thing keeping me from cracking up. I was already numb to her bullshit, but this was ridiculous. Then, a couple hours later, Laura sent me a screenshot. She had found the post too. She had the same reaction Leo did, and she shared it with me, both of us shaking our heads at the audacity. Tanya's blog, The Healing Retreat, Brent being her mental health mentor. It was all so absurd, so over the top that I couldn't take it seriously. "I told you she'd spin this," Laura texted me. "But this? She really thinks people are buying it." We both had a good laugh at it, even if the whole thing was just another layer to the mess Tanya had created. The deeper she dug, the more twisted her lies became. And the more people like Laura and Leo could see how far she was willing to go to turn everything around on her terms. I didn't bother responding to Tanya's texts anymore. She sent a few trying to get me to talk, but I just deleted them. There was nothing left to say. Everything she did was just more evidence of how far she was willing to go to cover up what she'd done. And I wasn't going to give her any more attention. Not after everything. At this point, I didn't need to fight. The truth was already out there, whether she liked it or not. And I was done. It started with Beverly. Tanya's mom, Beverly. She was relentless. She started calling my office, pretending to be a client. The first time I answered, I didn't even recognize her voice. It was all fake pleasantries and business talk, until she got to the part where she tried to tear me down. She was dropping hints about my unreliable work ethic, my questionable behavior, and how I was a liability to my clients. My boss pulled me aside the next morning. I could see the concern in his eyes, but I wasn't about to let this go. I told him everything about Tanya's blog, the lies, the fraud. He didn't even blink. Just asked me to forward whatever proof I had. So I did. I sent him screenshots of the identity theft attempt, the texts from Tanya, the termination letter from her job. It was all there. He blocked Beverly's number that same day. No more calls. Felt good, knowing he had my back. But it didn't stop Beverly. The next day, Tanya's cousin and her sister showed up outside my office building. They had signs and were chanting some nonsense about justice for Tanya. It was ridiculous, like something out of a protest rally. I could hear them from inside. The whole office was buzzing, people walking past the windows, staring out. Security shut it down in less than an hour. The cops showed up not long after, and Beverly was still going off, claiming they were just trying to peacefully protest for Tanya's rights. They had folding chairs blocking the entrance like they thought it was a sit-in at a public library. It didn't take much for the cops to get them to leave. The whole scene felt like some twisted circus. Later that night, I got a text from Beverly. "Do you really want to lose everything?" she wrote. "If you don't reconcile with Tanya, I'll make sure your reputation is destroyed. I'll make sure no one will hire you again. You'll never work in this city again." I stared at the screen, feeling something cold creep up my spine. She was threatening me now. This wasn't just a fight between me and Tanya anymore. This was them using every weapon they could find, every angle they could twist to get what they wanted. I didn't even have to think about it. Leo called as soon as he heard about the text. He was on it, forwarding it to the cops as blackmail. It was his move, his way of making sure she knew there were consequences. He said it wasn't just a threat. It was a crime. I couldn't believe it had come to this, that they would go this far. But the more I thought about it, the less surprised I was. Tanya and her family had always believed they could control everything. And now they were willing to do anything to make me bend, to make me play their game. I didn't respond to Beverly's text. There was nothing left to say. I knew what she was trying to do, and I wasn't going to let it work. It felt like the final piece of the puzzle was falling into place. The woman I'd once loved had turned into someone I barely recognized. And her family? They were just as bad, if not worse. The whole thing had spiraled into a disaster, and no matter how much they screamed, no matter how many games they played, I was done. They were never going to get the control they thought they had over me. Not now. Not ever. I didn't expect to hear from Brent, but sure enough, a message popped up one afternoon. He wanted to meet. Part of me was curious enough to agree. I don't know why I thought it would be any different than everything else in this mess. Maybe I was hoping to see him squirm. Maybe I just needed closure. I told him we could meet at the same diner where I'd met Laura. When he showed up, I almost laughed. He looked like he'd lost a bet. His dress shirt was wrinkled like it hadn't seen an iron in months, and his shoes, fake leather, scuffed, were probably his one nice pair. He smelled like desperation, like someone who knew he was in way over his head. He sat down across from me, his eyes darting nervously like he wasn't sure if I was going to punch him or listen. I didn't speak, just let him make the first move. Thanks for agreeing to meet," he started, fumbling with the napkin in front of him. "I know this probably isn't the best situation, but I need to talk to you about Tanya." I raised an eyebrow. "Go on." He looked around the diner like he was waiting for someone to walk in and hear him. "She won't stop calling me. I've blocked her, but she keeps finding ways to reach me. She's just too much now. I don't know what to do." I couldn't help but laugh. Not a real laugh, more like a sharp exhale that felt too forced to hide. "Too much, huh? That's rich." He squirmed, not liking the way I was looking at him. "Look, I don't want to be involved in this anymore, but she's making it hard for me to move on. I need her to stop. I thought maybe if you took her back, she'd leave me alone." I leaned back in my chair, watching him like he was some kind of case study. "So let me get this straight. You want me to take her back, after everything, and be her safety net so you can keep playing the poor, misunderstood guy?" His face flushed, and he sat up straighter, trying to hold onto some shred of dignity. "It's not like that. It's just, I didn't ask for any of this. I don't want her to keep blowing up my life. I shrugged. You made your bed, man. Now lie in it. Brent's eyes hardened, and his voice grew sharper. You're selfish. She's asking for help, and you're just letting her drown. I didn't flinch. I'm not the one drowning. She is, and you're sinking with her. You want to talk about selfish? You've been using her, too. Just like she used me. Brent opened his mouth, probably to try some last-ditch plea, but I cut him off. I'm done. I'm done being used by her. I'm done with all of this. You want me to take her back? Fix this? You're out of your mind. You got yourself into this mess. Brent, you can live in it. His face twisted in frustration, but he knew I wasn't going to budge. I'm just trying to make things right, he muttered, looking down at his hands. Yeah, well, you can't fix what's already broken, I said. You both can't just keep playing the victim and expect everyone to clean up your mess. He stared at me for a second, like he was waiting for some kind of apology or change in tone. But there was nothing coming from me. Nothing but finality. I'm done, I repeated, pushing back from the table. You should be too. Brent didn't say anything else. I stood up and walked out, leaving him there looking like a man who had just realized he wasn't going to get anything he wanted. Not from me, not from anyone. The day of the hearing, I couldn't help but notice the absurdity of it all. Tanya showed up wearing white. I'm not talking about a simple white dress or blouse. No, she had a full-on white outfit, like we were renewing vows instead of dissolving a marriage. It hit me, then, how much she still believed she could control the narrative, even here in front of a judge. She was sitting there in her pristine white, surrounded by her mom, her cousin, and some guy she introduced as her life coach. The life coach looked like he'd just come from a yoga retreat, and I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. I was calm. Leo, my cousin, was next to me, dressed sharply, ready for this. We were prepared for the fight, but it wasn't going to be a fight. It was going to be an expose. The hearing started, and Tanya's lawyer tried to spin everything. He was a smooth talker, tossing around words like emotional abandonment and irreconcilable differences, trying to paint me as the villain in this story. He was doing his best to distract from the mess she'd caused, the wreckage she'd left behind. But Leo had prepared for this. Your Honor, Leo began, his voice steady, clear. We've got all the proof we need to show where the fault lies in this marriage. Hotel charges at the beach resort. GPS records showing she was there with Brent while claiming she was sick. Fake sick days from work, documented by HR. Attempted fraud with the bank. And let's not forget the blackmail texts from her mother. He laid it all out. Everything. Each piece methodically, like he was building the case brick by brick. Tanya's lawyer tried to argue against the evidence, but it was pointless. The facts were the facts, and Tanya wasn't ready for what was coming next. Then Tanya tried her performance. She was crying now, wiping at her eyes like she couldn't believe how unfair this all was. She even turned toward the judge with the kind of pleading expression I had seen 100 times before. You don't understand what I've been through, she said, her voice breaking. You don't know the pressure I was under, the stress, my career, my life. It was too much. I had to do something to escape. The judge didn't buy it for a second. He just looked at her, and then he looked at me. He didn't need any more convincing. I've read the reports, seen the evidence, the judge said, his voice cutting through the room. It's clear this was not a case of emotional abandonment. The facts here are what they are. Tanya's eyes widened for a second, like she couldn't believe he wasn't falling for her act. Her lawyer tried to interject, but the judge held up a hand. I've seen enough. He turned to me. Divorce is granted. Clean split as per the prenup. I felt a strange sense of relief. The weight of this whole situation had been dragging on me, and now it was finally over. No messy back and forth. No endless drama. The judge looked at Tanya one last time. As for the legal fees, you owe Mr. Last Name $9,000. Your actions have caused unnecessary delays and complications in this matter. Tanya's face twisted. It wasn't the reaction I expected. She wasn't angry. She looked disappointed. as if the universe had betrayed her. I didn't feel sorry for her. Not at all. In fact, I felt more free than I had in months. Everything she'd tried to manipulate, all the games she'd played, it was all over. Leo slapped me on the back as we walked out of the courtroom. I could hear Tanya arguing with her lawyer behind us, but I didn't turn around. I didn't need to hear it anymore. As we stepped out into the hall, I couldn't help but feel a quiet sense of finality. It wasn't just the divorce being granted. It was the end of her power over me, the end of me being the person she used as a scapegoat. The judge had seen through it, and so had I. Outside the courtroom, Tanya tried one last time to guilt-trip me. She was waiting by the doors when I stepped out, her face a mix of exhaustion and something close to desperation. "Can we just talk?" she asked, voice shaking, eyes searching mine for any sign of weakness. I stopped, but only because I was tired of running from her. "What's left to say, Tanya?" She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I never wanted it to end like this. You know that, right? We were supposed to be a team." I shook my head, frustrated. "I wanted loyalty, not drama. You stopped being a partner the minute you started lying." She looked like I'd slapped her, but she wasn't done. That's when her life coach, the guy who had been pretending to guide her through this mess, stepped forward. He tried to put on that self-help guru smile. "You've both been through a lot, you know? The universe has a way of bringing people together and tearing them apart. But maybe you can reconnect, heal this." I could barely keep a straight face. Laura, standing beside me, wasn't having it either. "Yeah, buddy," she said with a smirk. "Maybe you should keep it in your pants, huh?" The life coach's face turned a little pale and he backed off. Tanya didn't say anything else. She just stood there, staring at me like I was the one who had betrayed her. The irony wasn't lost on me. A few weeks later, I heard Tanya was selling makeup at a mall kiosk. Seemed fitting somehow. She had the same wide-eyed optimism she'd always had, even if her life was going in circles. Still living with her mom. The image of her, hunched over a makeup display in a mall, was the final, small punchline to the mess she'd made of everything. Brent had gone back to his high school sweetheart. She had 3 kids now, so I guess it was full circle for him. Not that I cared. Then there was Beverly. I didn't know how she was still managing to get into trouble, but it came out that she'd been arrested for spray painting her ex's car. It was one of those moments where you almost felt sorry for the whole family, but not enough to care. Leo framed the divorce ruling like it was a trophy. He sent me a copy, saying it was the cleanest case of someone self-destructing he'd ever seen. I couldn't argue with that. I didn't let it linger. Things started changing for me. At work, I got promoted. The stress of the divorce was gone, and I was finally able to focus. And then there was Amber. I met her through some mutual friends. She was a 3rd-grade teacher, kind, sharp, and real in a way I hadn't realized I'd been missing. We were planning a weekend trip soon, to the same resort Tanya had used for her healing retreat. I had enough points from her mess to book the stay for free. Felt good. The last text I got from Tanya came in one night, a single line. "I did love you once." I stared at the words, feeling nothing. Not anger, not regret, just emptiness. So I typed back, "Cool." Then I blocked her number, and I let the silence take over.